If you're over 60 and you eat eggs almost every day, what I'm about to share might genuinely surprise you. For decades, you were told eggs were dangerous. Doctors, magazines, even your own family probably warned you. Too much cholesterol, bad for your heart, cut them out. But here's what almost nobody explains clearly. The story changed. And it changed because the research changed with it. Before we go any further, one honest note. This content is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Please consult your doctor before making changes to your diet or routine, especially if you take medication or have a health condition. Nothing in this video replaces that conversation. Now let's get into what the evidence actually shows. Somewhere between your 40s and 50s, something quiet starts happening inside your muscles. It's not dramatic. You don't feel it happen in the moment. But little by little, your body begins losing muscle mass, a process researchers call sarcopenia. And if nothing is done about it, that quiet, invisible loss becomes very loud later, in the form of a weaker grip, a slower walk, a harder recovery after a simple fall. Here's where eggs enter the picture, in a way most people never hear explained. Eggs are what nutrition researchers call a complete protein. That means they contain all the essential amino acids your body cannot produce on its own. And one of those amino acids, leucine, happens to be one of the strongest triggers your muscles have for rebuilding themselves. Research looking specifically at older adults at risk of sarcopenia has pointed to something simple, almost overlooked. Eggs are inexpensive, easy to digest, widely available, and rich in exactly the kind of high-quality protein that muscle preservation depends on. That's not a miracle claim. It's a practical one. And for a population where a large share of older adults don't get enough protein at each meal to properly support muscle repair, that detail matters more than most people realize. Think about what this means in real daily life. It's not about becoming a bodybuilder at 65. It's about standing up from a chair without pushing off with your arms. It's about carrying your own groceries up the steps, your legs still trusting you on the stairs at night. Muscle isn't just about how you look in a mirror. After 60, muscle is survival infrastructure, the difference between living independently and needing help for basic things. But protein is only the first layer of this story. Because what happens between eggs and your heart is far messier, far more debated, and honestly far more interesting than anything you were taught growing up. For years, the warning was simple. Eggs raise your cholesterol, and cholesterol clogs your arteries. Case closed, or so it seemed. Except newer, larger studies complicated that simple story, and that complication is where things get uncomfortable for the old advice you grew up trusting. Here's the part that surprises most people. In 2019, a large pooled study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association followed thousands of adults and found that eating an extra half an egg per day was linked to a higher risk of cardiovascular disease and death from any cause. That study made headlines. It seemed to confirm everything you'd always been told. But that wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of the argument. Just a few years later, a scoping review prepared for the Nordic Nutrition Recommendations in 2023 looked across dozens of studies and reached a very different conclusion. In European populations specifically, eating up to 1 egg a day was not linked to a higher risk of death, and the evidence did not strongly support any harmful effect on heart disease risk at that moderate level. A separate 2020 meta-analysis found the same thing. Moderate egg intake, up to 1 a day, showed no clear association with cardiovascular disease overall. So which one is right? Here's the honest answer, the one most videos won't give you. They're both right, for different people. Because in 2024, A study focused specifically on people who already had cardiovascular disease found something important. In that group, eating more than about 50 grams of egg a day, roughly one egg, was linked to a higher risk of death. Not in healthy people. In people who already had heart disease. This is the detail almost nobody explains clearly. Eggs are not universally dangerous, and they are not universally safe either. The honest picture depends entirely on who is eating them. If you're generally healthy, moderate egg intake, around one a day, has not been shown to raise your risk in the way you were taught to fear. But if you already live with heart disease, diabetes, or high cholesterol that your doctor is actively managing, your number might genuinely need to be different. That's not fear-mongering. That's just what the data actually shows when you read past the headline. This is exactly why a conversation with your own doctor matters more than any general rule a video like this one can give you. Your blood work, your medications, your family history, none of that fits into a single universal answer. What fits into a single universal answer is this. Don't let a decades-old fear make the decision for you, and don't let a single headline make it either. Now, here's where the story shifts to something almost nobody talks about when they discuss eggs and aging. It's not your heart, it's your eyes. Your eyes go through changes after 60 that most people simply accept as inevitable. Reading in dim light gets harder. Fine print blurs. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's a quiet worry about age-related macular degeneration, the leading cause of vision loss in older adults, affecting somewhere between 30 and 50 million people worldwide. Here's something researchers discovered that rarely makes it into everyday conversation. Egg yolks are one of the richest natural sources of two specific compounds called lutein and zeaxanthin. These aren't random nutrients. They accumulate directly in the macula, the part of your retina responsible for your sharpest, most detailed vision, where they act almost like an internal pair of sunglasses, filtering harmful light and reducing oxidative stress on those delicate cells. A study following adults over 60 found that eating just one egg a day for 5 weeks measurably increased blood levels of lutein and zeaxanthin without raising cholesterol levels in the process. That last part matters because it directly challenges the old assumption that anything from an egg yolk automatically works against you. There's another detail that tends to surprise people. Some research has found that lutein from egg yolks may actually be absorbed by the body more efficiently than lutein taken from supplements or even from leafy greens like spinach. Researchers believe this is because the fat naturally present in the yolk helps your body absorb these compounds more effectively, a process nutrition scientists call bioavailability. This doesn't mean eggs replace vegetables or that a supplement is pointless. It means the picture is more layered than most people assume. Your grandmother's advice to eat your greens was right. But there was a second part of that advice nobody gave her the science to explain. Now picture this in real terms. It's the difference between reading a birthday card from your grandchild without a magnifying glass or recognizing a familiar face across the room instead of a blur. Vision is one of those things you don't fully appreciate until it starts slipping away quietly, 1 year at a time. But there's a third organ in this story, one that connects everything we've talked about so far. And what egg yolks contain here might be the most underappreciated detail of this entire video. Before we get into that third piece, I want to ask you something directly, because this channel only works if you're part of it. If you're finding this useful, hit subscribe so you keep getting videos like this one, built on real research instead of recycled fear. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me which part surprised you the most so far, the muscle part, the heart part, or the eyes. If this video is helping you see food differently, a like helps more people over 60 find it too. And if you know someone who could use this, a simple share might be the most useful thing you do for them all week. Alright, let's get into the third organ, your brain. Choline is a nutrient almost nobody has heard of, and yet your body needs it constantly to build a chemical called acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter directly involved in memory and learning. Egg yolks happen to be one of the most concentrated dietary sources of choline that exists. 2 eggs at breakfast can provide roughly half to 70% of the choline your body needs in an entire day. Here's where it gets genuinely interesting. The Framingham Offspring Study, a long-running research project following thousands of adults over decades, found that people with higher choline intake performed better on tests of verbal and visual memory. A separate long-term cohort study following adults in Finland reported something similar. Higher choline intake was associated with stronger performance on verbal fluency, verbal memory, and visual memory tests. Then there's the Rush Memory and Aging Project, a study that followed older adults over time and found an association between higher egg intake and a lower risk of Alzheimer's dementia. Researchers believe part of the explanation may be that eggs deliver choline and omega-3 fats together, 2 nutrients that seem to work in tandem to support brain health, especially since both are frequently found at low levels in the brains of people with Alzheimer's disease. A more controlled study conducted in Japan took this even further. Middle-aged and older adults were given either a placebo or 300 milligrams of egg yolk choline daily for 12 weeks. The group receiving the choline supplement showed a significant improvement in verbal memory compared to the placebo group. I want to be careful here, because this is exactly the kind of claim that gets exaggerated online. None of this means eggs prevent Alzheimer's or reverse memory loss. These are associations, patterns researchers observe, not guarantees for any one person. But the pattern itself, showing up across different countries and different research teams, is hard to dismiss as coincidence. But here's the twist almost nobody mentions when they talk about eggs and the brain. More is not automatically better. A systematic review of the research on egg intake and cognitive function, published in 2025, found that moderate consumption, somewhere around half an egg to 1 egg a day, was linked to better cognitive outcomes in several studies. But at higher intake levels, above 1 egg a day, at least one study actually found an increased risk of cognitive impairment instead. The relationship isn't a straight line where more always means better. It looks more like a curve where moderate amounts help, and going far beyond that stops adding benefit, and in some data may even reverse it. This is the part that separates real nutrition science from the version you see in headlines. Headlines love absolutes. Real research almost never gives you one. Choline intake somewhere between roughly 187 and 399 milligrams a day, which is close to what you'd get from about 2 eggs, has been consistently linked to better cognitive performance across multiple studies. Going well beyond that amount hasn't shown the same additional benefit. So here's the honest, complete picture forming across everything we've covered. Eggs are linked to preserving muscle you need to stay independent. Eggs are linked to protecting the part of your eye responsible for your sharpest vision. Eggs are linked to feeding a nutrient your aging brain depends on for memory. And in every single one of these areas, the benefit shows up specifically at moderate intake, not at extremes in either direction. This is precisely why the old simple warning to avoid eggs entirely was misguided for most healthy older adults. But it's equally why treating eggs as some kind of miracle food to eat without limit would be just as misguided. The truth, as usual, sits in the middle, and the middle is exactly where good, unglamorous advice tends to live. Now here's the detail that ties every single piece of this together. The one thing that determines whether any of this applies to you specifically, it's your individual health context. Not a headline, not a general rule. You, specifically. If you're a generally healthy adult over 60, without diagnosed heart disease, without diabetes, and without cholesterol levels your doctor has flagged as a concern, the research broadly supports moderate egg intake. generally understood as up to about 1 egg a day as part of a balanced diet, without the harm you were taught to fear for decades. But if you already manage heart disease, if you're diabetic, or if your doctor has specifically addressed your cholesterol numbers with you before, your situation isn't the same as your neighbor's, and it shouldn't be treated as if it were. This is not me being cautious for the sake of sounding responsible. It's what the 2024 research on people with existing cardiovascular disease actually showed. A real difference in outcomes tied specifically to that pre-existing condition. This is exactly the part that gets erased when a video, an article, or a well-meaning family member gives you a blanket rule. Eggs are bad ignores the muscle, eye, and brain research entirely. Eggs are great, eat as many as you want, ignores the nuance in the heart research and the cognitive research alike. Both extremes are lying to you through convenience, because a nuanced answer takes longer to explain and doesn't fit neatly on a headline. You deserve the version that takes longer to explain because you're the one living in this body, taking these medications, carrying this specific medical history. That's not something any general video, including this one, can fully account for. It's something only you and your doctor can work out together, with your actual blood work in front of you instead of a stranger's assumptions. If there's one thing I want you to walk away with, it's this. Don't let fear from decades ago make your decisions today, and don't let a single number online replace an actual conversation with the person who knows your chart. So what does moderate actually look like on your plate in practice, without turning this into another rigid rule to follow blindly? Broadly, across the research we've walked through, 1 egg a day shows up again and again as the amount linked to benefit, without the downsides that appear at higher extremes. Not a strict prescription carved in stone for every single person, but a reasonable, evidence-based anchor point to discuss with your own doctor, especially if you fall into one of the higher risk groups we talked about earlier. How you prepare that egg matters too, and this part rarely gets mentioned. An egg poached, boiled, or scrambled with a small amount of healthy fat behaves very differently in your overall diet than an egg fried in a large amount of butter. Alongside processed bacon and white toast every single morning. The research on eggs generally studies the egg itself, not the fried breakfast plate built around it. Context changes everything, and so does the company your egg keeps on that plate. Pairing eggs with vegetables is another quiet detail worth mentioning. Spinach, tomatoes, peppers, and other colorful vegetables bring their own fiber, antioxidants, and nutrients to the table. And eating them alongside your eggs builds a more complete, more protective meal than the egg attempting to do all the work alone. This isn't a controversial claim. It's simply how balanced eating has always worked, egg or no egg. None of this replaces a conversation with your doctor about your specific numbers, your specific medications, your specific history. What it does is give you a realistic, grounded picture to bring into that conversation, instead of walking in either terrified of eggs or convinced they're harmless in any amount. Both of those extremes were sold to you at different points over the decades. Neither extreme was ever the full truth. Now let's bring this all the way home, because there's a real transformation hiding inside everything we've covered today. Think about where we started. Confused, maybe a little suspicious of a food you'd been told to fear for most of your adult life. Then, piece by piece, you understood something more complete. That your muscles need protein to fight the quiet loss that begins in your 40s and 50s. That your eyes carry compounds in the yolk that may help protect your sharpest vision. That your brain depends on a nutrient most people have never even heard of. And that your heart's relationship with eggs depends entirely on your own personal health history, not a universal rule. That's the understanding. Here's the application, the part that actually changes something in your life instead of staying as trivia you forget by tomorrow. It might look like finally having the real conversation with your doctor about your cholesterol numbers instead of avoiding the topic out of fear of what you might hear. It might look like adding an egg to a breakfast that's currently just toast and coffee because your muscles are quietly asking for more protein than you've been giving them. It might look like recognizing that the blanket warning you inherited from your parents' generation was built on research that has since been challenged, refined, and in some cases reversed. This is what changing the game actually looks like at this stage of life. It's rarely dramatic. It's rarely a single sweeping decision. It's small, informed adjustments made with real information instead of inherited fear, compounding quietly over months and years into a body that moves better, eyes that see more clearly, and a mind that holds on to memories a little more firmly. You don't need to overhaul your entire diet tomorrow morning. You need one honest conversation with your doctor and one small, deliberate decision about how eggs fit into your life specifically. That's not a dramatic transformation story built for a headline. It's a real one, built for your actual life. There's one more layer to this conversation, and it's honest enough that it deserves a place here instead of being quietly left out. Some research has looked at eggs and type 2 diabetes risk, and the findings depend heavily on where the study was conducted. Studies from the United States have found a link between higher egg intake and increased diabetes risk. But that same association hasn't shown up consistently in studies conducted in Europe or in Asia. Researchers aren't entirely sure why the geography seems to matter, though some suspect it may have less to do with the egg itself and more to do with what typically surrounds it on an American plate, alongside broader differences in diet and lifestyle between regions. This is worth sitting with for a moment, because it's a perfect example of why nutrition science resists the tidy, universal answers people crave. The same food, studied in different populations, with different accompanying habits, produces different results. That's not researchers being unable to make up their minds. That's what real, honest science looks like when it's actually followed carefully instead of flattened into a single scary sentence for a headline. If you live with diabetes, or you're managing blood sugar concerns your doctor is already tracking, this is exactly the kind of detail worth raising directly with them, alongside your specific diet, your specific numbers, your specific medications. Not because eggs are secretly dangerous for you, because your situation deserves a specific answer, not a borrowed one from a study population that may not reflect your life at all. This is the entire spirit of what we've walked through today, not fear, not blind reassurance. Just the real, sometimes complicated, always evolving picture, handed to you honestly instead of simplified into something easier to click on. Let me make this concrete with a simple, common situation, one that plays out in a lot of households after 60. Picture two people, both around 68, both generally active, both without any diagnosed heart or blood sugar condition. One of them stopped eating eggs entirely 20 years ago, convinced they were quietly damaging her heart, and replaced breakfast with just toast and coffee most mornings. The other kept eating a couple of eggs several times a week, without much thought either way, simply because it was easy and filling. Based on everything the research actually shows, the first person likely spent 2 decades avoiding a food that, at moderate amounts, wasn't the threat she believed it to be, while also missing out on a convenient, affordable source of the exact protein her muscles needed more of as she aged, and the choline her brain was quietly relying on for memory. The second person, without ever reading a single study, happened to land closer to what the evidence now supports. Moderate, regular intake, without excess, without complete avoidance. Neither of them made a reckless choice. Both were working with the information available to them at the time, often information that was outdated or oversimplified the moment it reached them. That's not a personal failure. That's simply what happens when nutrition advice gets passed down through generations without ever being revisited. This is exactly why revisiting old assumptions matters, not just for eggs, but for a lot of the food rules you've been carrying since your 20s or 30s. Nutrition science moves. It corrects itself. It refines its own earlier conclusions when better research comes along. The version of the truth you learned in 1985 isn't necessarily the version that holds up in 2026, and there is nothing wrong with updating what you believe when the evidence updates first. So here's where we land after everything we've walked through together today. Eggs aren't the villain you were warned about for most of your life. They're also not some miracle cure that erases the effects of aging if you eat enough of them. They're a real, ordinary food, with real documented benefits for your muscles, your eyes and your brain, and real documented considerations. If you already live with heart disease, diabetes, or cholesterol concerns, your doctor is actively managing. The truth was never as simple as either extreme made it sound, and by now I think you can feel why. What matters most isn't memorizing every study we covered today. What matters is the shift in how you think about this. Instead of inheriting a rule from 30 years ago without question, you now have a real, evidence-based picture to bring into your own life, and more importantly, into your next conversation with your doctor. That conversation, the one built around your actual blood work, your actual medications, your actual history, will always matter more than anything said in a video, including this one. If you've made it this far, you clearly care about aging well, not just longer, but stronger, clearer, sharper. That matters. Don't let outdated fear keep making decisions for you long after the science has moved on. And don't let convenience talk you into ignoring your own specific health situation either. The middle path, the informed one, is almost always the one worth taking. Before we go, a few quick things. If this video gave you something worth thinking about, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next on this channel. Drop a comment and tell me one thing you're taking away today, whether it's the muscle research, the eye health piece, the brain and memory findings, or the honest reminder that your own doctor knows your body better than any headline ever could. If you found this helpful, a like goes a long way in helping more people over 60 find this kind of grounded, honest information instead of fear-based content. And if you know someone, a parent, a sibling, a friend, who's been avoiding eggs out of old fear or eating without ever questioning it either way, share this with them. It might be exactly the conversation starter they need with their own doctor. Take care of yourself, ask the right questions, and keep choosing information over fear.